A very good morning, good evening, good afternoon, ladies, gentlemen, boys and girls, and welcome to another episode here on the Life Signatures Radio. It is a daily show that is focused on the subjects of purpose, productivity, and resilience. That's what we get to discuss. If you're looking for inspiration, motivation, instruction, you're looking for teaching on those three subjects, this is the virtual incubator for those three and any other that is related. Two things. One, if you've listened to these things and they make sense to you, inspires you one way or another, please share it with another person, and it's going to do the same to them. And secondly, if you want to donate, there is a link you can be able to click on and you can make your donation to the show. We have been discussing in this series, we've been talking about personal blockades, and I know that we are nearing the end of the whole series. But before that, let's bring to a close discussing the blockade of self-concept. But before that, let us do a recap. Stay tuned.
Welcome to the Life Signatures podcast with Lawrence Namale. Lawrence is a life coach, author, and keynote speaker who loves to tackle different topics on purpose, productivity, and resilience. His mission in life is to awaken all your boundless possibilities available in you. Life Signatures podcast is dedicated to bring to reality every single person who knows that deep down in their gut, there's got to be more to life than this. And now, here is your host, Lawrence Namale.
So then, the first thing we discussed long ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, is that there is something called the mental blockade. This is a powerful thing that we stop ourselves. In fact, by the way, let's just define a blockade. A blockade is something we've believed as if it is a fact, but it is not a fact, and therefore it limits us from becoming the best versions of ourselves that we were meant to be. So we don't get to our full glory because there are these blockades that have come. The first kind of a blockade is the mental blockade, something to do with your mind. The second kind we discuss is the spiritual blockade, something to do with your spirit, something to do with the vision, mission, values, and all that stuff, something to do with your planning and all that. And the third we discussed was the cultural blockade, something to do with the automatic way we do life without questioning it. And now I'm bringing to a close talking about the self-concept blockade. Self-concept is our estimation, who we think we are because of things that have gone on, or because of how we were raised, or because of what we do, because of the feedback that we are getting, because of the environment that we are living in, because of what we think or to meditate or to ruminate on about ourselves, sum total of our failures, our successes, and so on and so forth. We develop a self-concept. A warped sense of self-concept will help people to create blockades that will stop them from fulfilling their God-given potential. And we looked at different ways in which you can be able to cure those blockades, that particular blockade. And the first thing we discussed, we say that if you're going to cure a self-concept blockade, you've got to acknowledge that it is existing. And in the acknowledging, then there's going to seek help from professionals, counselors, psychiatrists, psychologists, mentors, coaches, pastors, all these people, professional people who know how to handle ideas to deal with our self-concept, who can help us to be on the journey back. It's a journey. Self-concept healing is a journey. We've got to take that journey. The second thing is you've got to affirm yourself in the very place where you thought you were not qualified, you thought you do not belong, you thought you do not deserve. You need to have some words of affirmation that you speak. You need to look for those words and craft those words and start speaking those words into your psyche over and over and over again at a time, maybe 5 minutes at a time, daily, consistently, without stopping, because the battle of the mind and the battle of the psyche never ends. It always keeps raging. And number 3, we say that you do the opposite of what the self-concept that is warped tells you. It tells you to shrink. It tells you don't do nothing. It tells you don't even dare speak. Don't even dare raise your hand. But we're saying raise your hand anyway. Speak anyway. Look for the microphone anyway. Even though you're going to stumble, even though you're going to be embarrassed, even though you're going to be ashamed, it is a temporary pain. It is a temporary cost that you're going to pay. It's a price that you're going to pay for the greatness, for the breaking of this blockade. Otherwise, if you remain shrunk, if you don't move out, if you don't do nothing, guess what's going to happen? What's going to happen is that blockade is going to be cemented and it's going to remain. Number 4, we say that you've got to have a vision, a long-term view of life, instead of living in just the here and the now. The here and the now can be you're poor, you're broke, and so on. And if you think that this is it in your life, then the blockade goes up. But if you think that I am going to be a world changer, I remember there's a time I was going through a very, very heavy transition in life, and I was facing oblivion, I was facing failure, I was facing, I don't know how I can describe it, but I was about to retreat back to the village from the city without knowing what's going to happen to my life anymore. And I remember telling a friend of mine that we used to pray together, and I told her that, one day I'm going to be a world changer. And it put a bit of perspective in my life, because I meant it. I had a conviction about it. It put a bit of perspective in my life, knowing that the ladder, will be greater than the past. And that gave credence to the fact that this blockade that is trying to come up in me, my self-concept, cannot necessarily stay for long. The 5th thing we talked about is that we need to create some victories under our belts. The more you win, the more you're telling your mind and the more you're telling your psyche that you are capable. The more you're telling your mind and your psyche that you're needed. The more victories you have, the better for conquering this self-concept blockade. Victory over bad habits, victory over personal discipline, victory over endeavors, and so on are the kind of victories that we need to have. The 6th thing we talked about yesterday is that we need to have consistency in our life, because when we do something today and we don't do it again tomorrow, it creates this avalanche of thoughts that we are not stable, and that suffers our self-concept. You cannot create consistency if you do not have intentionality. You have intentionality and you create that consistency. We talked about that. But today, let us bring this to a close. Now that I've been giving you a good recap, let's bring this to a close. The 7th thing that you've got to do is something that is close to my heart. Actually, this is what this podcast is all about. It's about purpose. So the 7th thing, if you're going to kill the self-concept blockade, you're going to discover your purpose and you're going to deploy it. I have talked about purpose discovery over and over again. And remember, the key word there is discovery. You're not going to have purpose being prophesied over you. Purpose is not a function of a prophecy. You already were created with one. Nobody needs to come and prophesy. Of course, I'm not going to throw the baby out there with the bathwater. Sometimes God sends people to speak positively into your life to confirm, not to discover, but to confirm that which is already said, that which you already, by the way, know. You already have an inkling in your spirit. Purpose is not something that is foreign, that you have absolutely no idea that I was meant to do this. You have an inclination. The thing is that we have so much focus on other things in life that purpose is such a foreign topic. Even though our psyche, our inner spirit tells us that this is what we're supposed to gravitate towards, We are waiting for a prophet or a pastor to come and tell it to us. But you've got to discover your purpose. When you discover what your purpose is, when I discover what my purpose in life is, then the idea of my self-concept, especially once I have discovered and I follow through to deploy that particular purpose, the idea of a self-concept blockade starts diminishing. Perhaps this is the mother of it all. A person who has known that this is my purpose or that's my purpose no longer is bogged down by pretense and by false appearances on the earth, especially if they are smack in the middle of deploying that particular purpose. You cannot interrupt them. Let me tell you something about someone who has discovered their purpose and they're doing it, and you're trying to interrupt them. It is like Jesus Christ telling Peter the apostle, "Get behind me, devil." He called his friend a devil. He called his friend Satan. It tells you that once you have purpose and you're deploying it, you don't have time. You don't have time for all these other shenanigans. They do not have time. People have discovered their purpose. They do not have time to compare. They do not have time to compete. They don't have time to look around and see what someone else is doing. They know that I have this thing to do. There's a time, this CEO who said that he's going to get to Mars before Elon Musk, right? He was kind of like bragging as if it's a competition. You know what Elon Musk replied on Twitter? He just said 2 words: do it. To date, that guy hasn't done it. We have never heard about that guy anymore. This man, Elon Musk, he's discovered his purpose and so much ingrained into it that he doesn't have time for other things. He's causing ripples, by the way, and he's getting friends and foes in equal measure, especially in the political world, because the things that he's doing are unorthodox stuff. The people who have discovered purpose, they don't have time to compete, they don't have time to compare, and all they want to do is to deploy that which they know is important, what matters to them. It is one thing to know what your purpose is, and it's quite another, by the way, to make it deployed, to deploy it, to do it. How many people know, by the way, how many people know their purpose? I just know I was called. I just know that there's a call of God on my life. You hear people saying, but they are not doing nothing about it. That's not what I'm talking about. Knowing your purpose starts creating a healthy self-concept for who you are, and you know that you're needed here on the face of the earth. You also know that you are sent, you are called. You know that you have a solution that you're providing. You're a solution provider here on the face of the earth. But deploying your purpose, it deals a death knell on the self-concept blockade, unlike any other thing in your life. It just kills it. It just dismantles it. Just destroys it. Because self-concept has an idea that you don't know what you're doing. You don't know why you're here. You don't belong here in the first place. You don't deserve in the first place. But once you're deploying your purpose, all that stuff goes away in a nutshell. It just goes away. So this brings us to a close of what we've been discussing about the blockade of self-concept. It's a very, very powerful blockade. If you're not careful, it can easily take you out. But like I've taught you, the past 7 or so episodes, this is how you take care of that particular business. But then, there is still much more to discuss on the subject matter of blockades. And that's why tomorrow we're going to deal with another powerful blockade. And that one is the blockade of, guess what? The blockade of experiences. Reality. Until then, bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Life Signatures Radio. If you enjoyed today's show, subscribe to Life Signatures Radio on iTunes, Stitcher, or visit our website at lifesignatures.libsyn.com. Life Signatures Radio, fresh, clean, and inspiring.